Hi, thanks so much for your company. I hope you're ready for some good old-fashioned rock, because my guest today has been part of one of Britain's longest-running bands, a group that managed to notch up more chart hits than any rock band in the UK. Any idea who I'm referring to? Absolutely, it was Status Quo, and I'm very pleased to introduce you to the band's original drummer, John Coghlan, who today plays with his own band called John Coghlan's Quo.
We did a little gig recently and it was great. What it is, it's playing some of the close stuff, some of my hits, and turning it into like a slightly different jazz feel. And it's worked out very well.
You've certainly come a long way, haven't you? You've played every genre of music in your time.
Yeah, I think I have. Well, we go to what we call the Old Boys Lunch twice a year in London, and it's all musicians from our past. And I played with lots of them, and Diesel Band, there was Partners in Crime, there was also all sorts of different things, and I played with Noel Redding and Eric Bell, and all loads of different musicians, and just how it was then. It was great.
You're still as passionate about music as you were when you first set out?
Yeah, I think so. Someone said because on my website there was a little thing saying, John Coglan's retiring. I hate that word, and I said, "Don't be silly. I'm not doing that. I just still like playing." And I think every musician will tell you that. I think once you start playing, you enjoy it. If someone said to me, "Would you rather record or play to a live audience?" I've mentioned this many times. I'd rather do a live gig and be in the studio for days on end. But having said that, as you know, I was involved with 14 albums. So Bob Young told me recently, I didn't realise I'd recorded so many.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about all of those albums. Explain to us how Matchstick Men came about, because that was really a breakthrough hit, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Francis Rossi wrote that at home. And he said because of the family were all there, it was written in his toilet at home.
Men often say that's where they do their best thinking.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's the only place to get a peace and quiet, unless you've got a music room with a big lock on it.
When you say that you'd prefer to be playing a live gig rather than in the recording studio, why is that? What's the rush that you get from playing in front of people?
Oh, it's just lovely. But they all come to see you. They all come to see the band, rather. At the end, they're all cheering and shouting and screaming for more. It's a lovely feeling. It's great. It's like you've entertained those people for an hour and a half or 2 hours, depending how long you play for. And it's just so nice to say, well, that was nice. They see you after the show and they, shake hand, want to autograph or something. And it is so nice. And like being in the studio, I remember when we did the choir albums, I'd go to the hotel or whatever and try to go to bed. I have this song in my head that's been going round for hours, the same song. I remember times of sort of recording it, doing 20 takes, then finding out we listened back to all the takes and we actually chose the second one. We didn't need to play all those others. Some guys prefer to be in the studio than be on the road, but I'd rather play live concerts. I remember recording in Holland many, many years ago, and we heard this massive bang, like a massive explosion. What the hell was that? We stopped playing, of course, and the lights went out. And what happened, I remember to this, that we walked outside, all the office people that were in the studio, they all run outside. And what happened had been a thunderstorm. The lightning hit a tree, and I could still picture this tree in the outside the front doors. And the tree was black all down the middle. It split in the middle and electricity went through the tree and under the ground. So, touch wood, lucky we weren't all blown to pieces. But I've never forgotten that. We wondered what it was. It was repaired. We carried on, as you do.
You were pretty young at the time, weren't you? It wouldn't take anything too seriously when we were younger. It's only when you get a bit older that you realise the consequences that could have been. Talking about when you were younger, John, is it true that you left school at 15 to start an apprenticeship as a mechanic, but you attended drumming lessons under a guy called Lloyd Ryan, who actually taught Phil Collins the drums at the time too? Is that right?
Well, what happened was my dad got me this job and I spent, I don't know how many months there. And I realised doing this job, uh, helping the mechanics out, you get dirty, filthy hands and greasy and covered in oil. Many moons after that, I left and did something else. And then 1968, 67, 68, Pictures of Matchstick Men was recorded and released. And we ended up having to go up to Manchester and do Top of the Pops.
How did you get to play in the band anyway in the first place?
When I was at school, there's a guy in my class called Stephen Ainsworth, and he said, John, you like aeroplanes? So I said, yeah, I do, especially military planes. He said, well, don't tell the rest of the class. I'm in the Air Cadets, Air Training Corps. And so we cycled up there. He took me up there next weekend on our cycles. And I met the commanding officer. I got measured up for a uniform. My dad was proud. My granddad was proud. Oh, lovely. You're going to join the Air Force. And anyway, so we put a little group together in the squadron. It's just three of us. And two guys kept coming in saying, can we listen? Anyway, so this happened about 2 or 3 times. And they said, look, are you doing anything, John, with this? So I said, no, not really. We're just in the cadets. Would you come and join our band? Which I did the following weekend. And my dad took me down there and with me drums. I don't know how he did it because my dad didn't have a car. He must have borrowed one or got a taxi or something. Oh, it was Francis Ross and Alan Lancaster, by the way. And they said, oh, John's arrived with his dad. They must have a few bob because they turned up in a taxi.
That band was called the Scorpions, wasn't it?
Well, I think it was called the Scorpions. I think it was called something else. And then we settled on a name called the Spectres. And we did release the Spectres name of a song called I Have Nothing, which was a Shirley Bassey single. And we did a rock version of it. And I still think it's being played somewhere on some record player somewhere. Then a manager called Pat Barlow came up with this name called Status Quo. And we thought, oh, that's all I suppose that'll do. We don't know. But previous to that, before we were Status Quo, we won a competition to go to play in Butlins for 6 weeks. It was a summer holiday camp. In those days, you weren't allowed to stay on the camp if you was an entertainer. You had to get a B&B, which really wasn't nice.
Right. So you got on immediately with the other guys.
Yeah, it was Francis Ross and Lancaster, a guy called Jesse Wolski, he was English, but his parents were Polish, I believe. Then Jess, I think, had enough and just left, and we got Roy Lyons to play keyboards. He was on Matchstick Men, stayed with the band for a few years. Then I remember travelling on a train somewhere years ago, and Roy said, I think I've had enough of this. And so he got up to the rail thing where you put your bag, and he walks up the train. We thought, well, he's going to get a coffee or something, in the restaurant car. And it was hilarious. And the train's pulling out the station. Then we saw him walking down the platform, waving goodbye. He got off, he'd left the band. We played a gig that night without keyboards.
Without him?
Yeah, when someone said, oh, God, that band's so much better without keyboards.
Oh, that's funny. Where did the name Status Quo come from?
I think it was a manager at the time. I don't know where he found the name, but he said it means as you are or something. So we stuck with the name. Then there was Ice in the Sun. My chair changed the whole thing. That was great. We grew hair long, put wild jeans and T-shirts. Previous to that, it was all like frilly shirts and jackets and, silly coloured trousers and trying to be pop stars. I mean, God forbid, we got rid of that. We got rid of that image, and Bob Young said, play colleges, universities, change the whole music set. And we just played the blues and some rock and roll, and it worked out well.
It worked out better than you could have ever imagined, really, didn't it?
Yeah, it was great, and we felt much more at home doing that. And I remember there was one place we played. It was some college or university somewhere years ago, and this character came up to us backstage and said, my name's whatever it was. I introduced the band, and we'd all said in the meeting that we wanted to just be one of those bands that just walks on and plays without being announced. Cool. V sign, love and dubs and all that. And this character insisted on announcing the band. So we thought, oh, God, okay, let him do it. Anyway, so I remember this gig, it was full of, you could smell cannabis at this college, university. And it was, if you just put your nose on stage, you can go, oh, that's nice.
And you get high.
Anyway, so, yeah, this character walks on stage and he gets a round of applause from his students and everything else, and they'll cheer. Hello, guys. And I think he says something like, welcome to tonight's show. I know you've been waiting for this band for years. I've managed to get them, ladies and gentlemen. Will you give a big welcome to They're Here? And he forgot who we were.
He forgot the band's name.
Yeah, and he was so insistent on announcing Status Quo. He was obviously wongered out of it with smelling the dope, and he just forgot. Yeah, it was great. We went down very well that night. I'm talking about drummers the other day to a friend of mine. I was lucky enough to in my career, meet all the drummers that I've admired, like Brian Bennett from the Shadows. Brian's great. I was with Brian the other day at the Old Boys Lunch in London. Bobby Elliott from the Hollies. There's a load. Simon Phillips, Matt Ginger. My favourite out of the lot was Buddy Rich. I was very lucky to spend 2 hours with Buddy Rich many years ago because I was playing Premier drums. Anyway, we went over to his concert, and I think it was something like Quo was in Manchester. He was in, I think, something like Preston Guildhall with his sellout concert. We were with our sellout concert. And so we walked into the concert hall, and his roadie said, "John, your guest is here." And he
I
was
love
lovely.
it.
We spent 2 hours talking about drums and touring the world.
Yeah.
And we got on like a house on fire because I was told he can be really sort of, it could be quite awkward. And there was a girl there interviewing him and me, and she said, "Well, buddy, you're the best drummer in the world. What do you think of this long-haired bloke?" Hair was down here then,
Right.
playing in a rock band. And I remember this to this day. He was very kind, and he said, "Well, man, there's no need for that. He's doing his job. I'm doing mine." Yes.
Yeah,
He
good.
said, "John, have a play my drums." Oh, no. And I sat on his kit and I tapped away, trying to do something that I could get away with. And he said, "That sounds great, John. Yeah, He said, "We better go and have a drink." Anyway, I knew at that stage that Buddy never allowed any of his band
To
to
touch
drink
them.
alcohol.
Oh.
Yeah, no alcohol at all. So we drank. I got a picture here somewhere of us toasting each other with a cup of coffee. It's lovely. But the reason we got on, I think, was because I didn't ask him, "Could you show me how to do a sec?" And I just think we just spoke about things that happening in the world. It was lovely, and I was never forgotten that. It was great.
I'm chatting with John Coghlan from Status Quo. John, can you describe what it was like in the 60s? It was really the heyday of music, particularly in Britain, wasn't it? It was when everybody was coming up and the scene was just happening.
Oh, it was great. I mean, I remember Status Quo. We supported Jerry Lee Lewis, the Kinks. We did loads of tours. We did Gene Pitney tour in the early days with Eamon Corner, Don Partridge, various other people. I remember one thing we did, which was, I don't think you'll ever see it again, but it was a tour of Australia, flying from Heathrow, London to Sydney, I think it was, with Status Quo, Slade, Lindisfarne, and a band called Caravan on the same tour. It was hilarious. And when we did the internal flying in Australia on Ansett Airlines, we found out that someone had put 3 or 4 detectives on the plane, and they always sat at the back. And I think they were expecting us to play havoc on the plane. It was funny because every day we got on the plane, they're sitting there, we're just waving, "Hi guys, how are you?" I remember the last day getting off the plane and, "Thank you guys, thanks for escorting us around Australia. You find anybody?" "No." "Bye." They were so pissed off that they didn't
Yeah.
arrest anyone. We knew who they were. It was great.
If you happen to be listening in the US and don't recognise their sound, it's because the band was largely ignored in Northern America after they abandoned psychedelia for that heavy boogie bluesy rock in the early 70s.
Did life change for you?
Yeah, I think it did. I think people wanted us to come and see Status Quo, signing lots of autographs and things, and grew the hair long, got the denim jeans and t-shirts and heads down boogie and all that. That's what it was about. And that changed everything. I did it for about 20 years.
America was still ignoring status quo at that time, weren't they?
Yeah, I think what we should have done, if I'd had my way, I think we would have uprooted from England and gone and lived in the States for a year and toured America and pushed ourselves, because I think Fleetwood Mac did that. And I think some other bands did. And I remember you could play in Texas and you play in Indiana or whatever you call it, and then California. In one state, they've heard of you. Another state, they've never even heard of you. Another state, they remember you from the record that was on the radio. And it's really difficult. It's such a big place. And I think you need to spend lots of time there. We were spoiled because we were big in Europe and big in the UK.
Yeah.
Lack of promotion, I think, probably in America, that's what it was, really.
Did that frustrate you?
I think it did. But like I said, we couldn't quite go back home to England because we knew we were big in England, United Kingdom, Scandinavia, and some other countries, and we were so pleased to be back. But I must admit, America in those days, in the 70s, I must admit, we did tour there a lot. And do you know what? I never saw, and all the time we spent there, never saw a gun, never saw any trouble, Now I think twice about going to America now. I can't work out what's gone wrong there.
Ice in the Sun, that was written by your former British pop star Marty Wilde, became your second top
Yeah.
10 hit. Marty Wilde was huge at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah, Marty. Yeah, I think he's still around now. I think he's doing well, I believe, and he wrote it for us, and it was great. You know, it was just nice to have people writing good songs for us, and of course the band, Bob Young, Rick Parfitt, and Lancaster, Francis wrote some good stuff, and as Bob did, and you know, it was just nice to record some of their songs, and some of the stuff we all got to chip in, like AB Blues on the B side.
The image change had enhanced the appeal of Status Quo, even though you were almost like a completely different band, weren't you?
Yeah, I think we progressed along as we went along. I think really the early Matchstick Men days, we enjoyed playing to the audiences, of course, but I think we sort of felt a bit with that image out of place. We didn't feel in our hearts it was right somehow. And so we moved on. Thank God to Bob Young for changing everything, because I think, as you know, it worked.
Yeah, it sure did. In 1972, at the Reading and Great Western Festivals, you really became hot property. You got a
Yeah,
record deal, and your first single for that new label was one called Paper Plane, and that
yeah,
just rocketed into the top 10 in 73.
yeah.
You were just in demand everywhere. How could you maintain such a hectic schedule at the time and have any sort of relationships at home? I mean, your feet wouldn't have touched the ground ever.
No, I know. As the story goes, our first wives, and I think we've all had first ones. Who doesn't these days? You know? And they didn't want us to go away. Oh no, you can't go away. I was just, what are you talking about? We just got married. You married a musician, a working musician. Of course, we're going to go on tour. We're not going to stay at home all day. We played lots of festivals. Reading Festival was great. Lincolnshire Festival was good. We played loads of festivals.
You were a huge deal wherever you went. And once you seemed to find the formula that worked, you kept rolling it out. You kind of recycled that same simple boogie on each of the albums and singles that came, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it was. We realised it was all working properly, and it was
Yeah.
lovely. And we got to a point where you think, you know, you can't do wrong. We all like to drink, you know, and some of the guys like to smoke. But somehow, when you get back to your accommodation, hotel, whatever it is, it takes 3 hours or more to calm down before you can actually crash out. You know, we'd always go to one of the band's rooms, have a drink, some wine or some beer, then say, yeah, good night and see you in the morning, and meet for breakfast, then carry on again. That's how it was.
You're doing this boogie all through the 70s. You're killing them wherever you're playing. And each album that you released went into the top 5. And of course, you had that huge #1 single, Down Down, in 1974. Can you shed some light on that one?
Well, I think it was a magnificent buzz for the band, seeing that we actually made a single go to #1. Every time we played that, the audience went mad, you know, massive cheers for it, and they'd sing all the words. And it's awesome. And I just think I've had fans say to me, "Oh, John, you know, you've made 14 albums, and which is your favourite album? What would you say it was your best single, your best album?" And I said, "Look, we made 14, and I always thought at the time the last album was you thought was always your best because you play it at home. You know, I don't really play any status quo stuff at home now at all, really, and I don't think I ever really did when I was touring because." You're used to playing it on stage, you know. Why would I listen to it at home? But you know, Down Down was one of our favourites. Mystery Song was another one that I liked, and Rick sung that. And try and remember what was your best album, your best single. I'd always say the best thing to do is ask a Status Quo fan; they'll tell you which is the best one. You know.
Artists often tell me that during that hectic period when you're really on top, that it goes by in such a blur that your feet don't touch the ground. You got no memory of it. People say to me, "Oh, I miss the 80s or I miss the 70s because we were so busy all the time." I can really understand that because you're just on the go constantly. You don't actually take time out to smell the roses at all.
No, I think there was a saying in those days: if we weren't recording, we were touring, and if we weren't touring, we were recording. You know, then would have a little bit of time at home, but I don't think it was enough, and I think we should have had longer. But having said that, it's easy to jump off the bandwagon and spend too much time at home. Then what you don't want to do at the time is lose your fans. You want to keep your fans because they've been good to you. And I mean, now I played recently down in the Butlins and Minehead where we all started. And the fans were coming up to me at the end saying, John, it's lovely to see you. Can I have a photo session? I had to do a signing session for an hour and a half. And I said to my wife, Julie, I said, look, this is ridiculous. I left in 81. It's like I'm still with the band, fans, I've always wanted a photo with you. Can you sign this? Can you sign the T-shirt?
When you get those fans and they stick with you through that period, they never leave you. That certainly proved to be the case with Status Quo, because the League of Fans just kept growing as each boogie kept rolling out. And I guess you really did the right thing. All those albums, all those singles just kept perpetuating the name of Status Quo, so it was always on the top of the charts. You got to a song like Roll Over Lay Down in 75. It was very similar to Down Down in 74. It was very similar to Wild Side of Life in 76. They all intertwined and melded into each other, really, didn't they?
Yeah, I think Roll Over Down was a song I was trying to remember earlier. That's the one we all co-wrote, all of us. Yeah, that was good. It was a song that the audience loved that. And I think, I didn't, as you know, I didn't really write songs, but the lads did. And I think, one song was probably, dare I say, possibly nicked from the other song, bits of ideas and things. But having said that, they're all good songs. They turned out well and the audience loved them. So we did the right thing, really.
Somehow music started going through a whole lot of different changes in itself in the late 70s, didn't it? And after the release in 1980 of the song Just Supposin', you got up and left the band in an extraordinary fashion. What happened? Had you simply had enough?
Well, I think it was a combination of us probably not getting on. And I think we were possibly worn out a bit. And the guys are doing quite a bit of Bob Hope. And I was just having a glass of wine now and again. And there was something terribly wrong with my headset. And I think we were all tired. And I just had, basically, I got to a point where I just needed a massive break. I needed to get away from it for a while. And I just think I've had enough here. And I think I got back home to Isle of Man where I was living at the time. And me and Julie took a year off to recuperate. And I think we went on holidays and I got back home, then realised I needed to play drums again,
It was still in your blood.
Yeah.
John, what were the circumstances around your leaving? From what I've been told, it appeared to be a really sudden decision. You just got up from the drums and called it quits. Can you tell us in your words how it came about?
Well, I think it was the band were getting involved in lots of things they shouldn't have done, and I wasn't happy about it. I think we're all exhausted. I think we were tired. What we should have done is had time off. I was in the studio. I wasn't very happy, and I don't know. It's difficult to explain. I just had enough. Then the next day, they said, "Oh, we've got the band want to use a drum machine." And I burst out laughing, saying, "You tell me a drum machine can do a shuffle? It can't do a shuffle like me." And then they insisted, "Oh no, we're doing this." And Alan Lancaster was saying, "Oh, John will be all right in the morning," which is normal. That was normal for me to be okay. If we'd had X, Y, and Z the night before, shouting whatever or having a row. Obviously, they got Pete Kircher to fly out and play, but then I think Alan Lancaster wanted to get me back to do, what was that massive concert? Live Aid. Al wanted me to do that, but I never got the phone call. So I said, "Oh, well, Then the only turn up was 2013 and 14, much later on, when we all got back together again.
But while you were sitting in that studio at the time and you were totally fed up, the story is that you were tapping around and then you got up and kicked the whole drum kit apart, walked out of the studio, and that was that. Is that how it happened?
I don't know. I think may have knocked the floor tom over or a cymbal. No, I just think it was.
You didn't throw a hissy fit quite as badly as what's been written about you.
No, I just think what we should have done is all stopped recording at the time, gone into one of the rooms at studio and sat down and talked about it, but that never happened. No one could be bothered. So, you get to the point, well, let's talk about it, but then I don't think anybody could be bothered, really.
John Coghlan was known to fans as Spud, or the Mad Turk. He was a sullen, mustachioed and mysterious figure behind the drum kit, and according to reports was sometimes prone to volatile outbursts of temper. Mostly, however, he kept to himself. As he's already alluded to, as Status Quo's popularity soared during the 70s and into the next decade, so did their drug intake. The members became the cocaine gang, and if you weren't doing it, you were excluded. That's really what happened to John. With the madness escalating around him, he remained an outcast. On that fateful day in 1981, he just snapped, kicked his drums across the room and then boarded a flight from Switzerland, where the group had been working, to his home on the Isle of Man. When he left, Quo quickly picked up the pieces by hiring Pete Kershaw. Their 1982 album, 1 + 9 + 8 + 2, was the first to feature Pete on drums. With all of this going on, John Coghlan managed to keep himself busy touring and recording with multiple projects and bands. Some 4 years later, bass player Alan Lancaster also quit Status Quo, leaving Francis Rossi and guitarist-vocalist Rick Parfitt to carry on the name. By the mid-90s, Status Quo had scored 50 British hit singles, which was more than any other band in rock and roll history at the time.
I forgot to tell you what happens when you leave a band that's known like that. You soon know who your friends are. You know, you want to make a phone call to someone and they sort of make an excuse because you're not in the band anymore. So you think, okay, fine, I can do without those people. And I did a thing with Partners in Crime. I made an album. I did something with the Diesel Band. I played with Noel Redding, Eric Bell. I played with Chaz Hodges, Phil Lynott. Phil Lynott, Chaz. Yeah, the single was called "We Are the Boys Who Make All the Noise." If you look at the video, in fact, if it's still about, you'll see Bev Bevan in the studio miming to the drums I did, because I did the session, because I was away somewhere. I can't remember what happened now, but I couldn't make the video shoot. It made a nice change.
So after you'd been rocking all over the world, you settled back, took a bit of time out. The bug still had you and you started playing with a whole lot of other people until you then started your own band.
Yeah, I think I got a call from a friend of mine in Lancashire who's an agent, and he said, "Look, why don't you put a band together that plays all your Quo stuff?" He said, "You're entitled to go out on the road with another band, playing all the hits you had," and which I did, you know. And then the John Coghlan's Quo, I did that for quite a long time, and it was good. I think having to play drums with those other musicians did help me in a big way, you know, playing different music and stuff. And it was a nice little test there for me, and I was really happy with that.
So despite the tensions that had been around between you and Rick and Francis and Alan Lancaster, you managed to reunite for a special one-off session in 2012. How did they talk you into coming back to do that?
Well, I think it was Alan G. Parker, who's a friend of ours, and he got this idea about getting the four of us together to play together in Shepperton Studios in England. And it was basically a studio for making movies, because it had soundproofing on the walls and ceilings and even the floor, I reckon. And the drum sound there was what I call very dry. It was horrible. And I had my lovely Ludwig drum kit, which I've still got from the pictures of Matchstick Men days. It's exactly the same one that Ringo had, the same colour and everything. Anyway, you know, I'm playing that. Oh, God. Then we spent, I think, was it two weeks? I think we rehearsed. Did we just get together once? That's what I think we did. Then there was talk of a tour, and I said, "Yeah, I'm up for it." And Alan was, and Rick and Francis. So then we spent 2 weeks rehearsing for the British tour. I think it was.
And that was the first tour you'd done together in some 32 years.
Yeah, it was. It was quite
Amazing.
strange. It felt quite different.
The four original members of Status Quo came to be widely known as the Frantic Four. It was back to rockin' all over the world.
We were terribly sober at the time, no drinking, which is fine, you know, whatever. But then I said we should always do a tour of Europe, and I think personally, we should have come to Australia and did a tour of Oz. That's what
I
I think.
agree. Mm.
Yeah. But also, what was interesting, a lot of people don't know this, but when we finished the last Dublin gig, where it was filmed, you know, get the DVD out, where they filmed the concert, and that was good fun. And Rick Parfitt said to Francis and Alan, "I'd like to carry on doing this, other than doing what Quo does now." And I said, "Yeah, I'm up for it," and Alan was. Anyway, Francis didn't want to do it. He said, "No, I want to do as what we're doing, you know, later." And Rick, he said, "I'm not, you know, I don't really want to do that." And Francis came up with the idea, "Why don't you call it Status Quo PLC. PLC? Yeah, Perfect Lancashire and Coghlan, which we'd have had to get another musicians to play, take Francis' place, of course, but that could have been okay. But
He was doing his
then
own solo stuff then, was he?
I think Quo was obviously still together with Rick and wanted to do another tour perhaps. But of course, then dear Rick passed away. Rick died, and that was it. That was a shame. But what everyone's been saying is that thank God for 13 and 14 tours, because if we just said, oh, well, maybe one day we'll do it, then of course, there's an old saying, it's always then too late. But thank God we did 13 and 14 for the fans. I mean, I was told, you'll love this story, we was told an Australian family flew to London to catch the 3 shows at Hammersmith, right? They copped all 3 shows. So think of the fare, the tickets, the cost of staying in a hotel.
Yeah.
Then they flew back to Australia. Then I presume went back to work, what they did. Then flew back again for the last gig in Dublin. Now, think of that,
That's diehard fans.
Yeah, and also someone told me that a lot of the men they saw in the audience on those tours were actually crying because it took them back to their days, when they got married or they had a party and whatever, took them back to their younger days when those singles were just released, and the albums were released. So it was lovely. It was great. It was very emotional. It was good fun. We all enjoyed it.
Who would have ever thought that we'd be talking about Status Quo 50-something years later?
I know, it's amazing. And also, I'm also going to be doing something with a local radio called Whitney Radio, and I think they're changing the name. And I've all done one show with them.
Great.
And I'm doing a thing, John Coghlan's Rock Heaven. And what it is, I decided that I wanted my own program of playing music that I like Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, AC/DC, loads of different types of music. I wrote a big list of songs I hear. And I think I'm going to have fun, mate. And the radio said, yeah, we'd love you to do it, Johnny. Do you want to do it every week? I said, no, let's do it once a month, see how we go.
Right.
And I've got Ray Jackson from Lindisfarne, a friend of mine, who's going to come in on the first show. And so it really is nice playing a pre-record, of course.
John Coghlan, you say that you made a list of all your favourite songs. What comes in at number 1 on your list of all-time favourite songs from any band?
Yeah, I've got a list in the other room there. I suppose I don't know. It could be Brown Sugar from the Rolling Stones. It could be something from the Cause. I've got loads. John Farnham. Yeah, that's another one. The Voice. I love that. Here's my wife giving me a list. Thank you, darling.
And your wife, I believe, is a very famous person in her own right. So she's not just the wife of a famous rock star, but she's competed in and won so many television quiz shows over the years, from the Weakest Link and Sale of the Century International. She actually represented England in that one. She's amazing.
Would you like to speak to her? No, she says she's not dressed for it.
That's not camera ready. No, well, you just congratulate her for us.
On my list, I got music, John Miles, SOS, ABBA, Runaway, The Cause, Uptown Girl, Billy Joel, Simply the Best, Tina Turner, New Flame, Simply Red, and it goes on. A lot of songs that I hear on the radio. Oh yeah, I'll put that on my show.
Fantastic. And John, your favourite Status Quo song?
I think single would have to be, as it's always been, Mystery Song, sung by Rick Parfitt.
John Coghlan, Status Quo. Thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Well, it's been good talking to you. Thank you, darling.
If you'd like to learn more about John, you might want to get yourself a copy of his recently released book called Spud. It's all about his life and times, both with and without status quo. You can order it through the website johncoghlan.com. Thanks again for your company today. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Don't forget, if you'd like to request a special guest, just get in touch with me through the website, abreathofreshair.com.au. Until we meet again same time next week, do have lots of fun, won't you? I'll look forward to being back in your company again then. Bye now.